The last beacon. The endless void of space stretched before Marcus Chen's viewport, a canvas of infinite black punctuated by distant stars. His salvaged ship, the Starfall, drifted through the darkness like a lonely ghost, its sensors probing the emptiness for anything worth collecting. After 15 years of solo operations in the Outer Rim, Marcus had grown accustomed to the silence, but never comfortable with it. The cabin's soft blue lighting reflected off his weather-worn face as he checked the ship's instruments for the 1,000th time. At 42, Marcus had spent more time among the stars than on any planet, choosing the solitary life of a salvage operator after the Earth-Mars conflict left him with too many memories and too few reasons to stay planetside. A sudden ping from his detection array broke the monotony. Marcus straightened in his chair, brown eyes narrowing at the readout. The signal was unlike anything he'd encountered before, a crystalline resonance that seemed to pulse with its own internal rhythm. "Computer, analyze signal pattern," Marcus commanded, his voice rough from disuse. Signal contains unknown crystalline matrices. Structure suggests artificial origin. Detecting faint life signs, the AI responded in its characteristically neutral tone. Marcus's fingers danced across the controls, adjusting the Starfall's course. Something about this signal felt different from the usual derelict ships and space debris he salvaged. It called to him, not just as potential profit, but as something more. The source of the signal slowly materialized against the starfield, a vessel of impossible beauty. Its hull seemed to be grown rather than built, geometric patterns of translucent crystal catching and refracting starlight in mesmerizing ways. But the ship was clearly damaged, with large sections darkened and fractured. Marcus engaged his ship's docking protocols with practiced efficiency, though his heart raced with anticipation. The Starfall's airlock sealed against the crystalline vessel with a soft hiss, creating a secure passage between the ships. Donning his EVA suit more out of habit than necessity, his sensors indicated the atmosphere was breathable. Marcus crossed the threshold into the alien vessel. The interior was even more remarkable than the exterior, with corridors that seemed to have been carved from a single massive crystal. But what caught his attention wasn't the architecture, it was the sound. A soft, musical hum resonated through the crystal walls, almost like a heartbeat. Following the sound, Marcus made his way deeper into the ship, his helmet lights casting rainbow refractions across the surfaces around him. The humming grew stronger as he approached what appeared to be the ship's central chamber. There, suspended in a matrix of crystal, he found her. She was humanoid in basic form, but her skin was composed of living crystal, transparent in some places and opaque in others, with an internal light that pulsed in time with the ship's resonance. Her features were delicate yet alien, with patterns of light flowing beneath her crystalline surface like liquid starlight. She appeared to be in some form of stasis, but Marcus could see the light within her flickering weakly. Whatever sustained her was failing. Without hesitation, Marcus began working to disengage the stasis field. His years of experience with various alien technologies guided his hands as he carefully manipulated the crystalline controls. The matrix slowly dissolved, and the alien woman collapsed into his arms, surprisingly warm despite her crystalline nature. Her eyes opened, revealing depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies. She spoke, not with words, but with pulses of light that synchronized with the ship's dying resonance. Marcus couldn't understand the language, but he recognized desperation when he saw it. "You're safe," he said, knowing she probably couldn't understand him either. "I've got you." The light beneath her surface flickered again, weaker this time, and Marcus knew he had to act quickly. He lifted her carefully, surprised by how light she was despite her crystalline composition, and began making his way back to the Starfall. As they crossed the threshold between ships, the alien vessel's humming changed pitch, becoming more urgent. Marcus glanced back just in time to see cascading patterns of light racing through the crystal walls, some kind of failsafe protocol activating. He barely made it back to the Starfall's airlock before the crystalline ship began to break apart, dissolving into countless shards that scattered into space like a shower of stars. The sight was beautiful and heartbreaking at once, like watching the death of a constellation. In his arms, the crystal woman stirred, her internal light pulsing with what seemed like grief. Marcus carried her to his medical bay, his mind racing with questions but knowing that right now, her survival was all that mattered. As he laid her on the medical bed, their eyes met again. This time, the light patterns beneath her surface formed more slowly, deliberately, as if she was trying to communicate something specific. Marcus watched, transfixed, as the patterns began to synchronize with his ship's systems, creating a bridge between their two very different worlds. In that moment, Marcus Chen knew his life of solitude was over. Whatever this mysterious being was, whoever she was, their destinies were now intertwined among the stars. Crystal Heart. Marcus spent 3 days watching over his crystalline guest, studying the ever-changing patterns of light that flowed beneath her translucent surface. The Starfall's medical systems struggled to make sense of her physiology. She seemed to draw energy directly from the ship's power systems, her body converting it into whatever sustenance she needed. On the 4th day, she awakened fully. Marcus was checking the medical readouts when her eyes opened, galaxies swirling in their depths. The lights in the medical bay flickered as she sat up, her movements fluid and graceful despite her crystalline form. "Can you understand me?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice gentle. To his surprise, the patterns of light within her body began to sync with his ship's systems again, and a soft voice emerged from the medical bay speakers. "I understand now. Your machine language is simple." Her voice was melodious, with an ethereal quality that made it sound like singing. "I am Lyra, last keeper of the crystalline archives." Marcus introduced himself, trying to hide his amazement at how quickly she'd adapted to communicate. "Your ship. I'm sorry I couldn't save it." Lyra's internal light dimmed slightly. The archival vessel served its purpose. It protected me until help arrived. She turned her gaze to him, her expression unreadable but somehow intense. "You were not what we expected to find." "We?" "My people, the Lumini. We sent out hundreds of archival vessels, each carrying a keeper." Her light patterns shifted to darker hues. "We knew our star was dying. We sought to preserve our civilization's knowledge and our species." Marcus sat down beside her bed, captivated by her story. "How many others survived?" "Unknown. The vessels were scattered across different galaxies. I lost contact with the others long ago." She raised her crystalline hand, examining how the medical bay's lights refracted through it. "Perhaps I am the last." The weight of her solitude struck Marcus deeply. He knew something about being alone in the vastness of space, but this was different. This was the solitude of potentially being the last of one's kind. Over the next few days, as Lyra regained her strength, Marcus learned more about her people. The Lumini were a species of crystalline beings who had evolved in a system bathed in unique radiation from their star. They had built a civilization that merged technology and biology in ways humans had never imagined. Lyra, in turn, was fascinated by human resilience. "Your bodies are so fragile," she observed one evening as they shared the ship's small dining area. She didn't eat as humans did, but she enjoyed the company. "Yet you venture into space, knowing its dangers." "Sometimes the risk is worth it," Marcus replied, watching how her light patterns changed with her emotions. "Like finding you." The patterns beneath her surface flickered rapidly, embarrassment, perhaps. It was still hard to read her expressions, but Marcus was learning. She reached out, her crystalline fingers brushing against his hand. The touch sent a subtle vibration through him, like the hum of a perfect crystal glass. "Your ship," she said, changing the subject. "It responds to me in ways it shouldn't. Your technology is primitive compared to ours, yet." Marcus nodded. "I've noticed. You've integrated with its systems somehow. The computer's running better than ever." The Lumini evolved to interface with energy and information systems. "It's how we—" She paused, searching for the right words. how we share ourselves with each other, and now perhaps with you. The implications of her words hung in the air between them. Marcus had felt it too, a growing connection that went beyond their daily interactions. Sometimes he swore he could sense her presence, even when she was in another part of the ship, like a faint musical note at the edge of hearing. Their peaceful coexistence was shattered a week later when the Starfall's proximity alerts blared. 3 ships had appeared on their sensors, their signatures matching known salvage pirates. Marcus cursed under his breath. They must have detected the unusual energy readings from Lyra's presence. "They're after me," Lyra said, her light patterns turning sharp and angular with concern. "My crystalline matrix. To them, it would be invaluable technology." Marcus was already moving to the pilot's seat, his hands flying over the controls. "They'll have to catch us first." As the pursuing ships drew closer, Lyra placed her hand on the ship's control panel. Her light patterns synchronized with the ship's systems, and suddenly the Starfall was moving with impossible grace, its reactions faster than any human pilot could manage. Marcus watched in amazement as she guided them through a field of space debris, using the crystalline fragments of her own vessel to confuse the pirate's sensors. Her consciousness seemed to extend throughout the ship, making it dance among the stars like a thing alive. But the pirates were persistent, and their ships were better armed. A glancing hit rocked the Starfall, making Lyra stumble. Marcus caught her, feeling the warmth of her crystalline form against him. For a moment, their eyes met, and he saw not just stars in her gaze, but a future he never knew he wanted. "Trust me," she whispered, both through the ship's speakers and somehow directly into his mind. Her light patterns began to pulse with increasing intensity, spreading through the ship's systems like a crystalline virus. The Starfall's engines surged with impossible power as Lyra channeled her own energy into them. The stars outside stretched into lines of light, and then they were gone, leaving their pursuers far behind in a jump that shouldn't have been possible for a ship of the Starfall's size. When they emerged from the jump, Lyra collapsed into Marcus's arms, her internal light dimmed but steady. He held her close, feeling the subtle vibration of her crystalline form against his chest. "That was incredible," he said softly. She looked up at him, her light patterns forming what he now recognized as a smile. "Perhaps," she said, her voice weak but amused, "this is why the Lumini sent out our archival vessels, not just to preserve our knowledge, but to find those who could help us create something new." As Marcus held her, watching her light patterns slowly strengthen again, he realized that his solitary life among the stars had led him to this moment. Sometimes the most precious salvage wasn't valuable technology or rare materials. Sometimes it was a chance at a future you never knew existed. Echoes of home. The weeks following their escape from the pirates brought changes to life aboard the Starfall. Marcus watched in fascination as Lyra gradually transformed parts of the ship, her crystalline influence spreading like delicate frost patterns across the walls. The modifications weren't just aesthetic. Each crystal formation served a purpose, enhancing the ship's systems in ways that defied human engineering. "Your ship accepts me," Lyra explained one morning as they observed her latest creation, a crystalline array that improved the sensor range tenfold. "It's almost as if it was waiting to evolve." Marcus studied her as she worked, noticing how her own light patterns had grown stronger, more vibrant. She moved with increasing confidence through the human spaces of the ship, no longer a refugee but a partner in their shared journey. Her presence had filled a void in his life he hadn't even recognized existed. Their quiet routine was interrupted when Lyra suddenly stiffened, her light patterns flickering erratically. "Marcus," she called out, her voice urgent through the ship's speakers. "I'm receiving a signal. It's Lumini." Marcus rushed to the bridge, finding Lyra already interfaced with the main console. Her crystalline form pulsed with complex patterns as she processed the incoming transmission. "Another archival vessel?" he asked. "No," she replied, her voice heavy with emotion. "It's a beacon, activated recently. There are others of my kind, survivors." Her eyes met his, swirling with hope and fear. "But they're not alone. The signal is erratic, distressed. Marcus checked the coordinates she had extracted from the signal. The location was deep in unclaimed space, far from established trading routes. Could be the same pirates, he suggested, or others who've learned about your people. Lyra's light patterns darkened with determination. We have to help them. They're not just survivors, Marcus. They're carrying our Genesis archives, genetic templates of our entire species. She paused, her form shimming with intensity. With them, we could potentially restore the Lumini. The implications weren't lost on Marcus. He had grown to care deeply for Lyra, but he'd always known she was possibly the last of her kind. The existence of others, and the potential to revive her species, changed everything. He pushed aside a sudden ache in his chest and plotted a course to the beacon's location. As they traveled, Lyra shared more about the Genesis archives. Our bodies are crystalline matrices, she explained, her patterns forming complex diagrams in the air. We can store not just information, but the essential patterns of life itself. The archives contain everything needed to grow new Lumini if we can find a suitable energy source. And the others who are after your people, what do they want? Lyra's light dimmed. Our bodies contain technologies beyond human understanding. Some would use us as power sources, others would try to replicate our abilities. They don't understand that we are not just advanced crystals, we are living beings. The journey took them through increasingly dangerous territory. Twice they had to hide from patrol ships that Marcus recognized as belonging to the Black Star Consortium, a notorious organization known for trafficking in exotic technologies. Their presence confirmed his worst fears. Someone powerful had learned about the Lumini. On the fifth day, they finally reached the beacon's location. The sight that greeted them made Lyra cry out in anguish. A Lumini vessel, similar to the one Marcus had found her in, was being held in a containment field between two massive consortium ships. Even from a distance, they could see the crystalline vessel's surface was cracked and dulled. 3 life signs, Lyra reported, her voice trembling as she interfaced with their enhanced sensors. They're alive but weakening. The containment field is disrupting their energy patterns. Marcus studied the tactical display, his mind racing through options. The Starfall, even with Lyra's improvements, couldn't hope to outgun 2 consortium vessels. But something about the containment field caught his attention. Lyra, he said slowly, an idea forming. You said your people store patterns of life. Could you store yourself temporarily in the ship's systems? Her light patterns swirled with surprise as she grasped his plan. Yes, but Marcus, if we fail, if the transfer isn't complete. He reached out, placing his hand against her crystalline cheek. The familiar vibration of her being resonated through his touch. I won't let that happen. Trust me, like I trust you. What followed was the most intricate dance of their partnership yet. Lyra began the delicate process of transferring her consciousness into the Starfall's crystal-enhanced systems, while Marcus prepared for their riskiest maneuver yet. The Starfall approached the consortium ships apparently defenseless, broadcasting salvage registration codes. As expected, they were challenged immediately. Marcus responded with a carefully crafted message about detecting valuable crystal formations, playing the part of an ignorant salvager. When they were within range, Lyra struck. Her consciousness, spread throughout the ship's systems, reached out to the containment field. The consortium ships detected the energy surge too late. The containment field inverted, releasing the Lumini vessel while temporarily trapping the consortium ships in their own technology. Marcus fired the engines at full power, extending the Starfall's docking array toward the damaged crystalline vessel. The rescue would have been impossible with human reflexes alone, but Lyra's presence in the systems made the ship move with impossible precision. The moment they were connected, Lyra's consciousness flowed through both vessels, stabilizing her weakened kin and beginning the emergency transfer protocols. Marcus felt her presence all around him, her determination and strength flowing through every crystal she had grown throughout his ship. As the consortium ships began to break free from the inverted containment field, The last of the Lumini survivors were brought aboard the Starfall. Marcus initiated their emergency jump protocols, Lyra's modifications allowing them to escape before their pursuers could lock weapons. When it was finally safe, Lyra returned to her physical form, appearing on the bridge beside him. She was weaker, the transfer having drained her significantly, but her light patterns danced with joy and relief. "You did it," she whispered, leaning against him for support. "You saved them." Marcus held her close, feeling the warmth of her crystalline form against him. "We did it together." He paused, knowing their relationship had evolved into something neither of them had expected. "Lyra, about the Genesis archives, about your people's future." She placed a crystalline finger against his lips, her light patterns forming what he now recognized as a smile. "The future," she said softly, "is not just about preserving what was, but creating what could be, Stardust dreams." The rescued Lumini survivors brought both hope and complications to life aboard the Starfall. There were 3 of them: Vega, an elder keeper of historical records; Nova, a young crystal technician; and Orion, a guardian of the Genesis archives. Their presence transformed the ship's interior, crystalline growths spreading and interconnecting in complex patterns that Marcus could only begin to understand. But it was the change in Lyra that captivated him most. Among her own kind, she seemed to glow brighter, her light patterns engaging in silent conversations that filled the ship with dancing colors. Yet she still sought him out, finding moments to share in their unique way of communicating. One evening, as they watched the stars from the observation deck, Lyra explained what the others had revealed. "The consortium isn't just hunting us for our technology," she said, her patterns reflecting concern. "They've discovered something about our biology, about how we adapt and bond." Marcus turned to her, noting how the starlight played through her crystalline form. "What do you mean?" "The Lumini are adaptable by nature. We evolved to resonate with different energy patterns, different forms of life." She paused, her light patterns shifting to softer hues. "Including humans." The implications hung between them like stardust. Marcus had felt their connection growing stronger each day, had noticed how his own body seemed to resonate at a subtle frequency when she was near. He'd attributed it to her modifications to the ship, but now... "Is that why they're hunting you? For some kind of biological breakthrough?" Lyra's patterns darkened. "They believe they can use our adaptability to enhance human capabilities. But they don't understand. It's not about enhancement. It's about harmony, about natural resonance between compatible beings." She reached out, her crystalline fingers intertwining with his. The contact sent shivers of energy through him, more intense than ever before. "Like this," she whispered. "We're not supposed to be compatible, and yet..." Their moment was interrupted by an urgent call from Vega. The elder Lumini had been analyzing their pursuit patterns and had made a disturbing discovery. Marcus and Lyra hurried to the ship's core, where the other Lumini had gathered. The crystalline chamber they had created pulsed with shared information as Vega explained. The consortium hadn't just been hunting them, they had been herding them, pushing scattered Lumini survivors toward a specific region of space. "They're looking for something specific," Orion added, his warrior's patterns sharp and alert. "Something they believe can only be achieved with multiple Lumini working in concert." Nova, the youngest, generated patterns of calculation and analysis. "They must have learned about the convergence, the way our people can combine our abilities to create something greater than ourselves." Marcus watched as Lyra's patterns flared with recognition. "The Genesis protocol," she breathed. "They don't just want our technology or our biology. They want to control how we create new life." The revelation sent ripples of distress through the gathered Lumini. Marcus stepped forward, placing a steadying hand on Lyra's shoulder. "Then we don't let them. We find a safe haven, somewhere they can't reach." But Lyra turned to him, her patterns forming complex equations he couldn't read. "It's not that simple anymore. The resonance between us, between human and Lumini, it's already begun to change us both." She guided his hand to her core, where her light pulsed strongest. Under his touch, he could feel a new rhythm, one that seemed to match his own heartbeat. The other Lumini watched with mixed patterns of wonder and concern. "This was not anticipated," Vega observed, "but elder patterns thoughtful. In all our planning for survival, we never considered that our salvation might come through harmony with another species." Nova's patterns brightened with excitement. "The genetic possibilities are fascinating. A hybrid form, combining the resilience of human biology with Lumini crystalline matrices. And making us an even more valuable target," Orion cautioned, his guardian patterns flaring protectively. Marcus looked at Lyra, seeing in her swirling galaxial eyes a same question that burned in his heart. "Is it possible," he asked softly, "for us to truly create something new?" she finished. "The Genesis archives contain all our biological knowledge, and your DNA is already showing signs of crystalline resonance. But Marcus," her patterns shifted to deep concern, "the process would change you too. Permanently." He thought about his life before finding her, the endless solitude of space, the emptiness he'd tried to fill with salvage and survival. Then he thought about these past weeks, about how she had filled his world with light and purpose. "Sometimes," he said, echoing his words from weeks ago, "the risk is worth it." Their shared moment was shattered by the ship's proximity alerts. Multiple vessels were dropping out of hyperspace around them, consortium ships, more than they'd ever encountered before. "They're here," Orion announced grimly. "They've been tracking us since the rescue." As Marcus rushed to the bridge, Lyra beside him and the other Lumini integrating with the ship's systems, he knew they were facing more than just a fight for survival. This was a battle for the future, not just of the Lumini, but of what humanity might become. The stars outside blazed with approaching weapon fire, but within the starfall, crystals sang with possibility. Whatever came next, they would face it together, resonating as one. The Hunter's Shadow. The consortium fleet surrounded them in a perfect containment pattern, their ships forming a crystalline geometry that seemed to mock the Lumini's own nature. Marcus's hands flew over the controls while the four Lumini merged their consciousness with the Starfall's systems, their combined power making the ship hum with unprecedented energy. 7 ships, Marcus counted, his voice tight, including one I've never seen before. The unknown vessel hung back from the others, massive and dark, its hull studded with crystalline formations that pulsed with stolen Lumini energy. Through their shared connection, Marcus felt Lyra's horror at the sight. "They've done it," she whispered, her patterns fluctuating with distress. "They've built a hybrid ship using parts of our fallen." A transmission cut through their defensive preparations. The holographic figure that appeared on the bridge was human, but something about him seemed wrong. His skin had a crystalline sheen, and his eyes glowed with an unnatural light. "I am Director Kane of the Black Star Consortium," he announced, his voice carrying harmonics that made the Lumini recoil. "Your journey ends here. The time has come for evolution." Marcus stepped forward, positioning himself protectively in front of Lyra. "You're the one who's been hunting the Lumini." Kane's altered face showed something like amusement. "Hunting? No, Mr. Chen. I've been gathering them, guiding them, just as I guided you to find Lyra." His gaze shifted to her. "You didn't think it was chance that brought you together, did you?" The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. All this time, their meeting had been orchestrated. He felt Lyra's patterns surge with defiance behind him. "Whatever you engineered," she said, her voice carrying the strength of all her people, "what grew between us is real." "Of course it is," Kane agreed, spreading his crystalline-veined hands. "That's exactly what we wanted. Proof that human and Lumini biology could harmonize. You've demonstrated it's possible. Now imagine that potential weaponized, mass-produced, an army of crystal-enhanced humans, each one capable of interfacing with technology in ways that would revolutionize warfare." The other Lumini's patterns flared with outrage. Vega stepped forward, elder patterns blazing. "You understand nothing. The harmony between species cannot be forced or replicated. It must grow naturally, like the crystals themselves. Kane's enhanced eyes narrowed. Then you leave us no choice. If you won't cooperate, we'll take what we need by force. The Genesis archives will let us engineer our own Lumini slaves, and study your bodies will reveal the secrets of your adaptation. Marcus felt something change in the ship's energy. The Lumini were preparing for something, their patterns aligning in ways he'd never seen. Lyra's hand found his, and through their touch, he understood their plan. "You want to see Lumini power?" Lyra challenged. "Then witness true convergence." The four Lumini began to glow with increasing intensity, their patterns synchronizing into a single powerful frequency. The crystals throughout the starfall resonated in harmony, and Marcus felt the energy flowing through him as well, his own cells singing with crystalline resonance. Kane's expression shifted from confidence to concern. "All ships contain them. Don't let them." But it was too late. The convergence reached its peak, and reality itself seemed to bend around the starfall. Marcus felt Lyra's consciousness merge not just with the ship, but with him, their beings harmonizing in ways that transcended physical form. Through their shared perception, he saw the universe as the Lumini did, patterns of energy and possibility, waves of potential that could be shaped by will and harmony. With their combined power, they reached out to the consortium's hybrid ship, connecting with the crystalline remains of their fallen kin. The effect was devastating. The corrupted crystals in Kane's ship responded to the pure resonance of the convergence, turning against their captors. Systems overloaded, structures began to break down, and the massive vessel started to tear itself apart. But the effort was taking its toll. Marcus could feel the strain on the Lumini, particularly on Lyra, as they maintained the convergence. Through their connection, he made a decision. Drawing on the crystalline changes already occurring in his own body, Marcus opened himself fully to the resonance. Energy poured through him like fire and starlight, burning away what he had been and forging something new. The starfall moved like thought itself, dancing through the chaos as the consortium fleet fell into disarray. Kane's flagship imploded in a cascade of crystal and light, taking with it his twisted dreams of forced evolution. When it was over, when they were safe in the depths of space again, Marcus looked down at his hands. His skin now held a subtle crystalline sheen, and he could feel the hum of the ship's systems as naturally as his own heartbeat. Lyra approached him, her patterns showing concern and love. "The change, it cannot be undone. You've become something new." He pulled her close, watching how their patterns harmonized. "No," he corrected gently. "We've become something new, together." The other Lumini gathered around them, their patterns showing acceptance and hope. What had happened here was more than just a victory over those who would abuse their power. It was proof that evolution could not be forced or controlled. It had to grow from understanding, from connection, from love. Vega's elder patterns shimmered with approval. Perhaps this is what the Genesis archives were truly meant for, not just to preserve what was, but to guide what could be. As Marcus held Lyra, feeling the resonance between them stronger than ever, he knew they had discovered something that Kane and a consortium could never understand. True power didn't come from dominance or control, but from harmony, between species, between hearts, between souls. The stars seemed brighter now, seen through his enhanced perception, and the future held possibilities he had never imagined. Whatever came next, they would face it together, neither fully human nor fully Lumini, but something gloriously, wonderfully new. Crystal Genesis. In the months following their escape from the consortium, the Starfall underwent a metamorphosis as dramatic as its crew. The ship was no longer merely a vessel, but a living extension of its inhabitants, its hulls lined with luminescent crystals that pulsed in harmony with both Lumini and human rhythms. Marcus stood at the helm, his transformed body resonating with the ship's systems in ways that still amazed him. His skin held a subtle crystalline sheen, and patterns of light now flowed beneath his surface, though more subdued than the full Lumini. He was neither purely human nor Lumini, but something unprecedented, a bridge between two species. Lyra worked beside him, their patterns synchronizing naturally as they guided the ship through the uncharted regions of space. They had been searching for months, seeking the perfect location for what they now called the Genesis Project. "The readings are stronger here," Lyra announced, her patterns brightening with excitement. "This system's star, it's similar to our lost home." Marcus studied the data through his enhanced perception. The star was young and stable, its unique radiation signature perfectly suited for crystalline life. The system's third planet hung like a jewel in the void, uninhabited but rich with potential. The other Lumini joined them on the bridge, their patterns merging into a shared analysis. Vega's elder wisdom flowed through their connection, confirming what they had hoped. This place, it could nurture new growth. Nova, the young technician, was already calculating possibilities. The planet's crystal deposits could be adapted, shaped to house the Genesis archives. With the right resonance, we could begin again, Orion finished, his guardian patterns showing cautious optimism. Not just survive, but thrive. As they entered orbit, Marcus felt Lyra's consciousness brush against his, sharing memories of her lost homeworld. Through their bond, he saw crystalline cities that sang with life, gardens where light and energy bloomed like flowers, and the profound harmony of a civilization that had evolved beyond physical limitations. "We won't just recreate what was lost," Lyra said softly, both aloud and through their connection. "We'll build something new, something that honors both our heritages." The landing site they chose was a valley rich with natural crystal formations. As they stepped onto the planet's surface, Marcus felt the ground resonate with potential. The starfall settled behind them like a sentinel, its crystalline modifications glowing in the light of the new star. The Genesis Protocol began with a ceremony that merged Lumini tradition with the new reality they had forged. The four pure Lumini arranged themselves in a perfect geometric pattern, their forms glowing with increasing intensity. Marcus and Lyra stood at the center, their hybrid energies adding a new harmony to the ancient songs. "The archives contain more than just biological patterns," Lyra explained as they prepared. "They hold our history, our culture, our understanding of the universe. But now they'll have something more, the story of how humanity helped us find a new way forward." The crystalline spires around them began to resonate as the Genesis Protocol activated. From the ground, new growths emerged, shaped by the combined will of all present. But these weren't just copies of what had come before. The new crystals held patterns of both species, creating structures that could nurture both pure Lumini and hybrid forms. Through their shared consciousness, Marcus felt the moment the first new life took shape. Within a specially grown Genesis chamber, energies coalesced into a tiny form that pulsed with both crystalline light and organic warmth. Their child, the first of its kind, born of love between stars. The other Lumini's patterns showed wonder and joy as they witnessed the new life form. This was more than just reproduction. It was evolution itself, guided by understanding and choice, rather than random chance or forced manipulation. As the days turned to weeks, the valley transformed. Crystal spires rose toward the sky, forming habitats and research centers. The Genesis archives were carefully transferred into the heart of their new home, protected by layers of living crystal that would help nurture future generations. More ships arrived, other Lumini who had detected the resonance of their new beginning. Each brought their own stories of survival, their own hopes for the future. And with them came humans, drawn by rumors of transformation and transcendence. Not all were compatible, but those who were added new harmonies to their growing symphony. One evening, as they watched the sunset paint the crystal city in rainbow hues, Marcus held their child, a beautiful being who shimmered with possibilities. The infant's patterns shifted between human and Lumini frequencies, already showing signs of abilities beyond either species. Cain was right about one thing, Marcus mused, feeling the resonance between himself, Lyra, and their child. This is evolution, but not the kind he imagined. Lyra's patterns swirled with agreement. Evolution through understanding, through choice and love. Not forced, not controlled, but grown naturally, like crystals forming in perfect conditions. The city sang around them, each structure and being adding its own note to the harmony. What they had created here was more than just a sanctuary or a new beginning. It was proof that the greatest transformations came not from dominance or control, but from the willing exchange between different ways of being. Above them, the new star shone with promise, its light refracting through crystalline towers in patterns that seemed to predict even greater wonders to come. The future they had forged would be neither human nor Lumini, but something gloriously, uniquely its own. And somewhere in that light, in the spaces between crystals and stars, new dreams were already taking shape. Starfall's legacy. 10 years passed like starlight through crystal. The colony, now known as Starfall Prime, had grown from a single valley into a sprawling crystalline metropolis that seamlessly blended organic and geometric forms. The original settlement, where Marcus and Lyra had first activated the Genesis Protocol, now stood as the heart of a new civilization. Marcus stood at the observation platform of the central spire, his crystalline enhanced vision taking in the city below. His transformation had continued over the years, his body now more crystal than flesh, yet still undeniably human in its core. Beside him, Lyra's patterns danced with pride as they watched their daughter Aurora, leading a class of young hybrids in their first resonance lessons. Aurora, like many of the first-generation hybrids, possessed abilities that surpassed both parent species. Her control over crystalline energies was instinctive, and her understanding of both human and Lumini perspectives made her a natural bridge between all the city's inhabitants. "She reminds me of you," Lyra said softly, her patterns merging with Marcus's in the familiar way that still made his heart race. Always pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Below, Aurora demonstrated a new harmony pattern she had discovered, one that allowed the young hybrids to create complex crystalline structures with unprecedented precision. The children's forms shimmered with excitement as they learned to shape the world around them. The city had become a beacon for both species. Humans who showed potential for crystalline resonance came seeking transformation, while scattered Lumini survivors continued to find their way home. But it was the children, the new generation of hybrids, who truly showed what was possible when different forms of life chose to grow together. Vega, now the head of the Council of Harmonies, approached them with news. The eldest patterns had grown richer with age, carrying the wisdom of both old and new ways. "The deep space arrays have detected something," Vega announced, sharing the data through their crystalline network. "Another archival vessel, but different from any we've encountered before." Marcus absorbed the information, his enhanced senses analyzing the patterns. "It's not Lumini," he realized. "At least, not entirely." "No," Vega confirmed. "It appears to be from another crystalline species, one that evolved independently." They too sought to preserve themselves among the stars. Lyra's patterns shifted with excitement. Another path of evolution, another way of being. The universe is more diverse than we ever imagined. The discovery sparked discussions throughout Starfall Prime. The council chambers resonated with debates and possibilities. Some feared contact with unknown species, remembering the consortium's aggression. Others, particularly the hybrid generation, saw an opportunity to expand their understanding even further. Aurora's voice carried clearly through the crystalline network that connected all citizens. "This is why we exist," she declared, her patterns showing the perfect blend of human determination and Lumini wisdom. Not just to preserve or combine two species, but to help build bridges across all forms of life. The decision was made. The Starfall, long since evolved beyond its original form, would lead a diplomatic mission to meet these new crystalline beings. Marcus and Lyra would command, with Aurora and a team of hybrid specialists accompanying them. On the evening before their departure, Marcus stood with his family in their private garden, watching the stars through the crystalline dome above. The same stars that had once seemed cold and empty now pulsed with possibility. "Did you ever imagine this?" he asked Lyra, feeling the warmth of their shared resonance. "That day when I found you, did you dream we'd come so far?" Lyra's patterns swirled with love and amusement. "I dreamed of survival," she admitted. "You taught me to dream of more." Aurora joined their resonance, her patterns adding new harmonies to their connection. Around them, the garden's crystals sang with generations of stored memories, the first activation of the Genesis Protocol, the birth of the first hybrids, the growth of their city, and countless moments of discovery and joy. "We're not just carrying the legacy of two species now," Aurora said, her form shimmering with purpose. "We're carrying the promise of what life can become when it chooses to grow together." As they prepare for their new journey, Marcus reflected on how far they'd come from those first moments on his old salvage ship. The void that had once echoed with loneliness now resonated with countless harmonies. The future they had built wasn't just about preservation or combination. It was about continuous growth, about finding new ways to help life flourish in all its forms. The stars above Starfall Prime seemed to pulse in rhythm with the city's crystalline heart, each light holding the promise of new discoveries, new connections, new ways of being. Their story hadn't ended with survival or even with successful adaptation. Instead, it had grown into something far more profound, a testament to life's endless capacity for transformation when guided by understanding and love. As the first light of dawn broke over the crystalline spires, its rays fracturing into countless rainbow patterns, Marcus felt the resonance of all they had built together. The harmony between human and Lumini had created not just a new species or a new civilization, but a new way of seeing the universe itself as an endless symphony of possibility, waiting for those brave enough to add their own notes to its eternal song.